My name's Chuck Kohler. I was a ex-farm boy, 17 years old, trying to be the very, very best military man that I could be there at Pearl Harbor. I felt that I was always fortunate that I was in the duty section, assigned the, therefore restricted the base, and assigned the 0800 to 1200 security watch at Aerial Patrol Squadron VP 23's hangar, Building 54, located on the harbor inlet end of Naval Air Station Fort Island. I think that gentleman's father was also there on Fort Island at the time. And you said that he saw the very first bomb to fall and strike his hangar, which would have been Building 6, Hangar 1. I wore some of that bomb for a couple of days until they told me to get your ass up to the sick bay and get that taken care of, you know. Anyway, but as I say, I was in an upper-level office attempting to type a letter to my dear sweet mother. I heard the sound of an approaching aircraft in the background, but that's not unusual. We're a naval air station. Airplanes come and go, but not usually on a Sunday and not that early in the morning. That sound grew louder and louder, and I'm thinking, oh, well, okay, a couple of the aircraft carriers, the Lexington and the Enterprise, had left the harbor the previous week to deliver short-range aircraft to our military forces on Midway and Wake Island, and I figured they must be returning, and as usual, they will launch their aircraft while they're still out at sea. Those airplanes come in and operate off the land base while the carrier is in the harbor. Suddenly, the sound of that airplane changed, and I knew immediately that it was in a power dive. And I'm thinking, oh, that's one of those air group pilots. You know, he's got a bit bored with that regulation formation flying, and he's wanting to do a little hot dogging and have a little fun. And I'm thinking, boy, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes when the commanding officer gets a hold of him. He's really going to be in trouble. Little did I realize that it was those of us there on the ground and on the ships that were going to be in some serious, serious trouble very, very shortly. Suddenly and almost simultaneously, there was a tremendous roar. That's a bomb your father saw fall. And bomb fragments, explosion debris, and window glass came crashing into the back of my head, ears, neck, and onto my shoulders. Those of you who have experienced similar events will remember that that can kind of derail your train of thoughts. It did mine anyway. It took me a few minutes to get my train of thoughts back together. And when I did, I'm still thinking it's one of our friendly air group pilots, hot dogging, crashed. I'm going to go down and see if I could be of some help. I got up, pushed myself back from that debris-covered typewriter desk, got up, shook off as much of that debris as I could, and started for the door. For some reason, I thought, oh, I could be in trouble up here on this typewriter. You know, I'm supposed to be on watch. Anyway, I reached back, grabbed that unfinished letter, ripped it out of the carriage of that typewriter, crumbled it in my hands, and threw it in the wastebasket as I went out the door. You can only imagine how many times I have wished that I would have kept that letter. When I got on the lower level, went out through the narrow opening after the unclosed end of that big rolling steel hangar door, the sound of another aircraft. I looked up, and here comes this airplane in a steep power dive, and I'm seeing what's looking like blinking or flashing lights on the front, and I'm hearing strange popping and buzzing sounds all around me, but I don't recognize any of them for what they were. Later, I was told that what I thought was blinking or flashing lights was actually machine gun muzzle flashes, and those popping, buzzing, and whizzing sounds that I was hearing were those machine gun bullets striking and ricocheting off the steel hangar door right behind me and off the concrete apron on which I was standing. But since I didn't recognize them for what they were, I didn't think I was in any danger from them. My interest and my concern was drawn to a big old bomb hanging there on the bottom of the fuselage between the fixed landing gear and that old valve radial engine dive bomber. Suddenly that bomb released. It wobbled as it began to fall. That airplane began to pull out of his dive. By the time it had completed its dive and was in level flight, I don't think it was more than 100, 150 feet over my head, if that high. It's then that I first saw and recognized that big, round, red insignia there on the bottom of the wing. That, and the fact that he has just dropped a bomb, has convinced me that, oh, these are not the friendly fellows I thought they might be. I turned around, hurried back inside the hangar, hoping I could find someone with the key to the ammo shack. All of our guns and ammunition was locked up. I wanted to get a gun and get at these guys, you know. But as I come in the front door of the hangar that morning, the other few that I went on duty with were heading out the back door. Somebody, I suppose a duty officer, spots me and said, "Hey, you, follow me." I went after them. I thought, oh boy, we're going to get some guns and ammo. We're going to do something about this, you know. But as they went out the back door of building 54, instead of turning to the right and going down across the narrow roadway to the end of the A&R hangar, building 38, if I remember right, where the ammo shack was located, they turned to the left, ran out there somewhere, and jumped into an unfilled construction ditch. I jumped in after them. You know, I hit the bottom of that ditch, looked up. I'm looking right at a guy there in his white uniform. The work uniform was those blue bell-bottom dungaree trousers and a blue chambray work shirt, but he was in his dress white uniform as though he was going into Honolulu, going to church or something. Never did find out why he was in his white uniform, but I'm so thankful that he was, because there on the left sleeve of that uniform was the petty officer's rating badge. And I recognized the wing, round cannonball, the insignia of an aviation ordnance. You the duty oarsman, yeah, you got to keep the ammo shack. Let's go get some guns and ammo and shoot these blankety blanks, you know. So I hadn't much more than hit the bottom of that ditch, and I and that ordnanceman were on our way up out of that ditch. Somebody, again I suppose the duty officer, calls out, "Get back in the ditch. Get back in the ditch." I don't want to be in that ditch. We're military men. We should be putting up a defense. We shouldn't be here in this ditch. Besides, I know this is the beginning of that war that they've been talking about and we've been preparing for. And I'm from a proud family. And I damn well know that if I'm going to lose my life in this or any other battle of this war, I would want my family and my country to know that I died fighting, not hiding. We continued about that ditch, started to run for the ammo shack. Then I heard the most unexpected military command directed at myself and that ordnanceman that I thought I would ever hear. Anyway, somebody, again I suppose the duty officer, shouts, "Get back in the ditch or I'll put you on report for disobeying a direct order." Hell's bells. Talk about being between a rock and a hard spot. These guys in these airplanes are machine gunning and dropping bombs, trying to kill as many of us as they could. And our own duty officer hiding here in the ditch is threatening us with military discipline for wanting to put up a defense. I couldn't believe it. With total and complete disregard for the threat of military discipline, with total and complete disregard for the fact that aerial bombs and machine gun bullets were raining down the air till we were running, we continued to run. We made it to the ammo shack. The ordnanceman unlocked the door, let himself in. I'm right behind him. "What do you want?" "Give me a 50 caliber machine gun." Now, I'm a recent farm boy. The biggest gun I'm used to firing on a regular basis is a shoulder-fired 22 caliber rifle. This is not a shoulder-fired gun. This is a fixed mount machine gun. Hell, it looked to me like a cannon without wheels, you know, but I took it as best like I could, most likely cradled it in my arms. I wasn't very big at the time. Turned and started for the door. By now, I guess a few other brave souls figured they hadn't ought to be in that ditch either and followed us to the ammo shack. The guy coming in the door was somewhat taller than I, huskier built. I just offloaded that machine gun to him. I said, "Here, take it to the PBY parked in front of 23 Singer. I'll get the ammo." He looked a bit surprised, but he took it, turned, and out the door he went. I turned around, and there again, I'm so thankful for that aviation ordnance, because without his cooperation, none of this that I was involved in could have happened. Anyway, when I turned around, he was just setting 2 canisters, 50 caliber ammo up on the counter. I grabbed those 2 canisters of ammunition, turned out the door I went. Now, I'm not a runner or a sprinter, but I guarantee you, I beat the guy with the gun to the airplane. He had a heavier load than I did. We were approaching from the east-southeasterly direction on the port side of that aircraft, the same direction that the attacking aircraft were coming in from. But the ladder to get into that airplane was hanging from the starboard gun blister. I ran around the backside, set those canisters down, started the ladder. I don't think I got more than a couple of rungs when it dawned on me, hey, if I get up inside this airplane, am I going to be strong enough to reach down, pull those big old gun up inside? I don't think so. So I jumped down off the ladder just as the guy with the gun get there. I said, "Give it to me. You get up inside. I'll hand it to you." Boy, he chopped up that ladder, jumped inside, turned around, reached down. I got the gun to him somehow, most likely muzzle first, which is the lightest end, but which is also a safety no-no. But I don't think either one of us were thinking about safety right at that time. I grabbed the canister of that ammo in my right hand, got it myself with the left hand, set it inside the airplane, back down, got the second one back up the ladder, set it inside, jumped inside, picked those 2 canisters up, turned, stepped across to the port gun blister just as he was swinging that mounted gun out and locking it in firing position. I set the canister down under the gun, flipped the lid open, coupled the end of the belt, ready to load, thinking he'd have the breech open. But he was just standing there staring skyward. I looked up, and here comes another one of those guys in a power dive. Blinking, flashing lights. Now I'm only hearing popping sounds, which I was later told were some of those machine gun bullets passing through the fuselage of that airplane we're in. Big old bomb hanging there on the bottom. Man, I couldn't wait. And I said, I got to get his train of thoughts back together. I just reached over, slid the lock forward, threw the breech open, fed the end of the belt into the loading mechanism, slammed the breech shut, grabbed the charging pin, pulled it back, let it go. Bam! We get around the chamber. Shoot! I shouted. And he pulled the trigger. Now, I guess he was one of those guys that thought with a machine gun, you don't have to aim. You just point in a general direction and fire away. Because I stood there and watched those tracer bullets fly off harmlessly through empty space, nowhere near where that airplane was. I think that's when my country boy hunter instinct kicked into gear. I used to shoot jackrabbits on the run, Chinese ringneck pheasants on the fly. Nah, not with a shotgun, with a .22 caliber rifle. I knew that you had to aim and put that bullet where the target would be when the two of them came together. I shouted, "Let me get the next one." He let the gun down, stepped aside. I brought it back up, and just as I did, here comes another one of those guys at a power dive. Blinking flashing lights, big old bomb hanging on the bottom. Man, I got a bead and a lead. A bead and a lead, and I continued to lead, and I squeezed the trigger. I continued leading and firing. All the while that airplane came down, pulled out of its dive, and passed just overhead. I watched those tracer bullets fly through the air. It looked like every one of them went right into the round opening on the front of that old air-cooled radial engine valve dive bomber, and then stitched the stitch right down the bottom of the fuselage. Now, some of you guys know and remember, following each one of those tracer bullets, there are 4 regular bullets. Another tracer, 4 more regular bullets. So I know here and I know here that I did some damage to that aircraft. But you're not going to be watching him to see what happened to him. He's going away. He's no longer a threat. You better be looking for the next one that's coming at you. I bring that gun back down. I'm looking for another one in a power dive. I don't see it, but there's one out over the channel, maybe 2 city blocks away, well within the range of a .50 caliber machine gun. He's not in a power dive, but his steep banking and descending left turn is though he's getting ready to make another machine gun run on us. Because he's in that banking turn, I can see the cockpit. It's about 6 or 8 feet behind the front of that airplane. I figure at that distance and at that speed, if I use the front of that airplane as my aiming point, I'm going to get some rounds into the fuselage, maybe even into the cockpit. And believe you me, if you can get a couple of .50 caliber slugs bouncing around inside that cockpit with that pilot, you're going to give him something else to think about besides coming back and machine gunning you a second time. I maintained that lead, squeezed the trigger. Brrr, I don't think I got off more than about 6 or 8 rounds, but I saw 2 of those tracer bullets disappear into the fuselage of that airplane just forward of the cockpit. And when they did, that airplane did an abrupt rolling right turn and was gone from my field of fire. No more aircraft came back to bombing or strafe fire into the island that morning. I stayed at that gun. I got to fire at other aircraft on their way to or from other targets as they passed through my limited field of fire. About halfway through that 2-hour raid, about the same time that the second wave of those attacking aircraft came in, the USS Nevada came down the channel, making a run for open water. Boy, those pilots, those airplanes got on it like a swarm of bees. They were hoping they could sink it there in the channel, and that would have blocked the harbor for some time. And I got to fire short blasts at some of those as they too passed through my limited field of fire. But by now our own aircraft parked on the ramps and on the apron and an adjacent hangar building 6, hangar 1, were beginning to burn so fiercely. All of these were between where I was at Building 54 and where the Nevada headed there in the area of Hospital Point. They were beginning to burn so fiercely, putting up some heavy clouds of black smoke that it just obliterated that field of fire. Now, I got one more thing I want to... Am I over time?
Yeah, we'll give you a few more minutes. Go ahead.
50 years later, I was listening to a news broadcast from Hawaii. They had made an attempt to locate as many of those Japanese pilots as they could who had survived the war, were capable, physically able to travel, had brought them back to Pearl Harbor for that anniversary. They were interviewing them. They asked this one pilot, "What part did you play in that raid?" Listen carefully to this now. He said, "I was the lead pilot of a group of 9 aircraft. Our assigned targets were the airplanes and the hangars on Ford Island." That's where I was. He said, "When I went in for my first run, machine gun, dropped my bomb, I didn't see a soul. It was like the whole island was asleep." But he said, "We were surprised how fast they reacted, because by the time I had came around and was lining up for my second machine gun run, there was so much defensive fire coming up that I turned and went elsewhere." Oh, I would love to have talked to him. That's the guy that dropped the very first bomb to fall at Pearl Harbor that morning. That's the bomb that got to me, spilt of my blood, most likely the very first blood to fall at Pearl Harbor that morning. But in spite of that, I think I'm the guy that got to him mentally with that on-target .50 caliber machine gun fire and changed his mind about coming back and machine gunning us a second time. Anyway, thank you so much. And thank you, ladies, because without you, we would not have had all the stuff that we needed to carry on those battles.
Chuck, just one question for you, Chuck. Chuck, just one quick question. Where were you a farmer, a farm boy?
In Minnesota.
In Minnesota, okay. We'll excuse that, but
there you become a hunter and a gatherer real early, because oftentimes being a good shot would make the difference of whether you would or would not have food on the table.
Yeah.
You know, back in the 20s, 30s. 40s.
Tough times. We have a question for you here.
You're from Minnesota?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a good place to be from, but not a good place to be.
This young lady, Chuck, this young lady here has a question for you.
So while you were doing all the,
I don't.
when you were shooting down the planes,
We'll give you the question.
when you were shooting the planes, was everybody else still in the ditch?
When you were shooting at the planes, was everybody else still laying in the ditch?